Hello, everyone. Thanks for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here to present my article. I'm Hanhui Xu from Nankai University, China. The title of my presentation is The Black Box Problem of AI in Medicine, a view based on the ethical principle of do no harm. The presentation will have 4 parts. In the section 1, I will introduce the black box problem of medical AI systems and especially the existing views and arguments. In the section 2, I try to discuss medical paternalism and the ethical principle of do no harm. In the following section, I try to argue that the black box AI systems are a new type of medical paternalism. In the last section, I try to respond to the high accuracy argument, according to which medical AI systems have a higher accuracy than human doctors in disease diagnosis. Patients should trust such systems. Now let's see the black box problem of AI in medicine. In my presentation, artificial intelligence technologies particularly indicate machine learning algorithms and deep learning models. So such artificial intelligence technologies usually have 3 features. Firstly, they have self-learning capacity. Secondly, they usually have a high predictive accuracy. For example, Google AI and the Deep Patient system, they have a very high predictive accuracy in breast cancer diagnosis. The third feature, I think, is what I want to emphasize in my article, is that such medical AI systems are usually unexplainable. By unexplainable, I mean no one can understand why or how a treatment recommendation is produced by such AI systems. Just like the picture shows, designers just threw training data into the systems, and the systems based on the training data can produce desired output. But no one, not just the patients, doctors, but also designers understand the mechanism within the algorithms. That's the black box problem. According to the existing views and arguments, some people believe it should be cautious towards the application of medical AI because the mechanism within these systems are unknown. Secondly, patients' trust is grounded on explainability. However, some others claim that such worries are unnecessary because medical AI systems outperform human doctors in disease prediction. Secondly, safety is grounded on accuracy rather than explainability. Such medical AI systems can, because they have a higher accuracy than human doctors in disease diagnosis, so they can ensure patients' safety better. For such a view, there is a response. Accordingly, unexplainable diagnosis and treatment suggestions provided by such medical AI systems conflict with information disclosure requirement held by patient-centered medicine. Patient-centered medicine requires physicians to disclose adequate information to patients to help them to make their own medical decision. However, in my view, this response is not enough because such a response does not show why the patient-centered medicine is desired or why it is better than the traditional paternalistic model in medicine. Further, according to the people who deny the necessity of the value of black box problem, they usually claim that the medical AI systems can guarantee patient safety better than human doctors because they have the higher accuracy in disease diagnosis. But the point is whether the argument is as strong as it sounds. I will focus on these 2 questions in the following sections. Now, my core idea of the article is that medical AI systems can cause harms to patients due to their unexplainability. Such, in order to avoid such harms, medical AI systems should be more explainable. The argument based on in order to support the idea, I have two arguments. The argument one is that medical AI systems provide diagnosis and treatment suggestions without any explanation, ignoring the patient's value and preference in medical decision making. It might cause serious harm to patients. So the point is, medical AI systems, from this perspective, medical AI systems should be more explainable, not because they conflict with patient-centered medicine, but because they can cause harm to patients. The second argument is that although medical AI systems have a higher accuracy than human doctors in disease diagnosis, for example, in breast cancer detection, their misdiagnosis might cause serious harm to patients. The point here is that such harms might be more serious than that caused by human doctors' misdiagnosis, considering we do not understand what elements contribute to the misdiagnosis. I will use a thought experiment to show it in the section 3. Now, the section 2 is about the medical paternalism and the ethical principle do no harm. Medical paternalism refers to that physicians induce patients to do what they believe to fit the patient's best interests by withholding the information or misinforming them. The feature of medical paternalism is that it assumes that there are shared objective criteria for determining what is best. Hence, the physician can determine what is in the patient's best interest with limited patient participation. Professor J. Katz, in his influential book, The Silent Word of Doctor and Physician, has argued that such paternalistic actions had been prevalent in the history of medicine. However, the tradition has changed. Before the middle 20th century, it is disease-based physician-centered medicine, and under such a model of medicine, the physician-patient relationship is what we usually call a paternalistic model. Under such a model, physician didn't disclose adequate information to patient. By contrast, it is believed that physicians know their patients' interests best, and that they have authority to make decisions for their patients. However, time is changing. Now, the modern medicine, we usually call it patient-centered medicine. Under such a model of medicine, the physician-patient relationship changes to what we usually call the informative model. Informative model of the physician-patient relationship requires the physicians to disclose adequate information, including benefits, risk of the treatment, and the mechanism of the diagnosis to patients to help them to make their own medical decision. The question here, so I want to show that the reason behind the change, there are two reasons. First is patients know their own interests best. So we believe before in the ancient times, we believe physicians know their patients' interests best, but now we believe that the patients know their own interests best. Secondly, paternalistic model ignores patients' values and preference, which would cause serious harm to patients. Now, according to the ethical principle, do no harm. The ethical, we should avoid such harms. The do no harm principle, simply speaking, is require physicians to help patients, or at least to do no harm patients. In my view, the application of such an ethical principle can be reflected in the change of the model of the physician-patient relationship. relationship. So informative model can avoid harms caused by the paternalistic model. Here I use two examples because but the time is limited. We usually hear news or cases that the people with particularly religious background refuse blood transfusions. So in the paternalistic model, from the physician's professional perspective, maybe blood transfusions can save a patient's life, so it fits patient's interest. But in the informative model, patients can decide for themselves if they refuse blood transfusions. Even from the professional perspective, it's good. Which the patient's decision or choice should be respected, because for them, blood transfusions seem to cause much more serious harm to them. Okay, so but some people still claim that under given conditions, medical paternalistic actions can be defined. So in certain circumstances, due to the influence of some factors, patients may not rational enough to make a good decision fitting their best interests. These factors include misunderstanding of the disease, excessive unnecessary worries, and so on. Then, in order to reduce patients' needless worries, physicians can hide part of the diagnosis information or misinform patients with vigor expressions. So the point here is that the defenders do not claim that physicians can define their patients good and then make decisions for them. Rather, in their view, patients know their interests patients still know their interests best, but they are disturbed by some factors to make their decision are not too rational. In the section 3, I try to argue that the black box AI systems is a new type of medical paternalism, and the point is not the soft paternalism that can be defined. So, unexplainability of medical AI systems would create a new type of medical paternalism. The questions here are that whether such a new type of medical paternalism can be justified, just like soft paternalism. If the unexplainability of medical AI systems is just like the soft paternalism that can be defined, then we don't worry. The second question is it possible to create a model involving medical AI systems, human doctors, and patients to solve the explainability problem without opening such black boxes? If the answer is yes, it seems we don't need to worry about the black box, because even without totally opening this black box, we can still have other method to solve the explainability problem. But in my view, the answer to these two questions are no. Applying medical AI system in the medical practice usually have two models. The model one is AI patient model. In such a model, AI systems replace human doctors, and then without explanations, so they just medical AI systems face patients directly. So with any explanation, such a model puts patients back to the paternalistic model of the physician-patient relationship that cannot be defined. So it's not soft paternalism, it's hard paternalism, because in such a model, medical AI systems do not care about patients' reference or values. They just based on the synthesis or based on the patient's disease to give their diagnosis and treatment recommendations. The second model, another model, is the AI medical AI system human doctor patient model. In such a model, AI systems play the assistance role, just like the picture shows. Doctor is still here. A human doctor is still here, and the medical AI systems just provide some diagnosis, and it is a human doctor's duty to explain diagnosis and disclose information to the patients. So it sounds good. This model sounds good because it seems that it seems to be good to solve the explainability problem. But the question here, but I try to divide the model, this model into two situations. Situation one is doctor's judgment can fit AI's diagnosis. So it means doctors can provide explanation based on their medical knowledge, experience, and so on. So generally, human doctors do not understand the mechanism of the medical AI systems, but they can explain the result produced by medical AI systems because the results produced by medical AI systems fit their judgments. Okay, and then based on such a diagnosis, they can explain the risk, benefits of the treatment, and other adequate and other issues to patients. But in the section 2, AI diagnosis confuse human doctors, or AI diagnosis conflict with that produced by human doctors. In such a situation, questions arise. In such a situation, should human doctors accept medical AI diagnosis and then provide treatment plan based on such diagnosis? As I said in the previous slides, medical AI systems outperform human doctors in disease diagnosis. So if there is conflict between medical AI systems and human doctors in disease diagnosis, should human doctors accept medical AI's judgments? If they accept, then the next question is how to explain such diagnosis to patients. So I think these two questions cannot be properly solved. So that's we have the reason to worry the black box problems. We should ask for more explainable medical AI systems. Now, in the last section, I try to respond to the high accuracy argument. According to the high accuracy argument, safety is grounded on accuracy rather than explainability, and human doctors' diagnoses are not always explainable. Such medical AI systems can guarantee patient safety better than human doctors. Patients should trust them. Patients should trust the diagnosis provided by medical AI systems, even they are unexplainable. It seems the logic here is that safety is granted on the accuracy, right? Medical AI systems can have a higher accuracy than human doctors in disease diagnosis. It indicates that medical AI systems can guarantee patient safety better, but rarely. I try to use a thought experiment to respond to such argument. Suppose there are 4 disease A, B, C, D, and the treatment for disease A is just needs a couple of days rest, and the therapy for disease B is painkillers plus more sleep, antibiotics for disease C, amputation for disease D. So for a human doctor, he's a human doctor and usually have a 90% accuracy. For a patient with a particular symptoms, the human doctor, the first coming to the human doctor's mind is that the patient has a disease. The disease is one of the one from the 4 diseases, which are disease A, B, C, D. But the first step for the human doctor is to exclude disease C and disease D from his list, and the final step for him is to make a diagnosis that the patient has disease A, and then he suggests the patient to go back home for a couple of days rest. For an AI doctor who has 99% accuracy, for a patient who with the same symptoms, the AI doctor, the first coming to the mind is also that the patient has one disease among the disease A, B, C, D. But the first step for AI doctor is to exclude disease B and disease C, and then between disease A and disease D, the final step for the AI doctor is to give a diagnosis that the patient has disease A, and then suggest him to go back home for a couple of days rest. So this sort of experiment fit the claim that the medical AI systems have a higher accuracy than human doctors in disease diagnosis. But the point is, for the human doctor, if he made a mistake, misdiagnosis disease A as disease B. But the harm caused by the misdiagnosis to the patient is not so serious, because disease B's treatment is painkillers plus more sleep. But for AI doctors, if it made a misdiagnosis, misdiagnose disease A as disease D, the harm caused by such a misdiagnosis to patient would be more serious, because disease B requires amputation operation. I'm not trying to argue that the sort of experiment rarely happens in medical practice. But the point is, we do not understand what elements contribute to the misdiagnosis of medical AI systems. Such the sort of experiment has a possibility to happen. And when it happens, so it means it expose patient to risk to be harmed, to be seriously harmed. So the conclusion here is that, firstly, without the explanation, treatment suggestions provided by medical AI systems ignore patients' preference, which might cause serious harm to patients, as I argued in previous slides. And secondly, the harm caused by AI misdiagnosis might be more serious than that caused by human doctors' misdiagnosis, considering we do not understand what elements contribute to the misdiagnosis. Medical AI systems should be more explainable to avoid such harms. At least, AI algorithms should be interpreted so that it is understandable for patients when their judgments contradict AI diagnosis, or when different AI systems generate inconsistent results. That's the whole story of my presentation. Thanks for your time.